What's up guys, welcome back to Al's Homestead. In today's video, I'll be doing the week 10 vegetable garden tour. We'll start over on the end where I have more of our shade crops like these sugar snap peas. They are absolutely loaded right now. Over here inside the fence to keep them away from the rabbits are the cabbages. There's our rhubarb plant we just planted at the beginning of this year. Some thyme, parsley, and 2 kinds of basil. Some various flowers are in there. A row of green beans. Back there it's so grown up you can't really tell, but it is my raised bed and I have some potatoes in there. More potatoes right here. Some volunteer dill. Right here is the majority of our green bush beans. Back behind the beans, we've got some ever-bearing strawberries. And then behind them, some green dent corn that is just starting to tassel. Over here, we've got the majority of the squash. There's a lot of pumpkins in there, a few gourds. On this trellis here to my left, we have some red noodle beans that have yet to flower. Over here on this other trellis, we've got some green beans, the pole variety with lots of Japanese beetles on them, but they're still producing very well. Behind me is one of our tomatillo plants. In the back of the squash patch, there's a bunch of volunteer sunflowers. In between the squash and the tomatoes, we've got some cucumbers on kind of a trellis that we set up. This is the time of year when we're starting to get a ton of tomatoes ripening. Basically all the varieties are ripening at this point. I got the big brandywines ripening. We've had the cherry tomatoes turning color for a little while now. Sheboygan tomatoes are ripening. Everything is starting to ripen and it looks like it's going to be a pretty good crop of tomatoes this year. Big shout out to my mom for pruning most of these tomato plants. All of these cosmos are growing in what should be the tomato patch, but they sprouted as volunteer plants from seed that fell last year, and now there's basically a jungle of them. Moving over to the front of the greenhouse chicken coop, we've got this huge volunteer squash plant with a ton of squash on it. Over here is the majority of the peppers. At this point in the summer, they are just loving the heat and they're looking really good. Pretty sure by now these are the green chili peppers, not the sweet bananas. Not exactly sure what pepper this is. I'll have to look at what I planted earlier this year, try and figure it out. Here's a bell pepper. Here's a pretty nice looking bell pepper that's not done growing yet. Inside the greenhouse is the biggest red giant amaranth plant I've ever grown. It's about 8 feet tall because that's how high that part of the chicken coop is. This thing is pretty massive. Here's me for a size comparison. I'm about 6'2", and it makes me look pretty darn short. Down here is a volunteer tomato plant. Probably some sort of weird hybrid going on here, but we'll see what it produces. Down here are some cabbage and lettuce plants I started a few weeks ago for fall crop. These Great Lakes crisp head plants I've already had really good luck with this year. I really like the taste of the lettuce and the size of the heads. Also pretty much hidden by the volunteer tomato plant is my tiny watermelon plant that just doesn't seem to ever grow. We've got one volunteer tomato plant right here. My biggest and best looking pepper plants. They look like they could be jalapenos maybe. There's a bell pepper plant right here. And then all the way in the back there's 3 tomato plants, all of slicer varieties. On the outside of the greenhouse, by the nesting boxes, I've got a few more volunteer sunflower plants. And they just came up from seeds that we fed the chickens during the winter. Ones the chickens didn't find, and they managed to sprout this spring. I've been cutting back this oregano nearly every week, and it's looking great. Earlier in the summer, the Japanese beetles were not as bad as they have been the last couple of years. I believe that was due to the drier weather. The grubs feed off of lawn roots, so when there's lots of rain and your lawn is lush and green, the beetles will thrive. They'll start hatching out, and that's what happened. We started getting rain. The beetles started coming out of the lawn and going crazy. As you can see from our super full beetle traps, we have a pretty bad problem here in northern Wisconsin. They're absolutely hammering our apple trees right now. Most of the things in the garden are not doing too bad. They are on the green beans on the trellis, like I mentioned, and they're not bothering our pear trees at all, which is super awesome because for once, they finally got a really nice crop of pears on this year. So thanks for watching today's episode of Al's Homestead. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. I'd love to see you back watching other videos later on. And if you had any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I'll see you right back here in the next episode of Al's Homestead. To watch me fighting a raccoon infestation, click this video right here.